Welcome everybody, my name is Christian and today I'm continuing my waves 1 through 4 upgrade ranking. Unfortunately, wave 5 has already been announced, but since we don't know the details of it, I'm still going to stick to just waves 1 through 4. But unfortunately, this is now going to be dated at some point in the future, but I'll just have to do an update of it. So today is going to be Ordnance upgrades. Before I go into more detail, I just want to list which ships can take the Ordnance upgrade slot. For the Imperial side is the VSD-1, Gladiator, and Raider. For the Rebels, it's currently only the MC-30. Number 1 is Assault Proton Torpedoes. It's a little bit cheaper than the number 2 Assault Concussion missiles, and the reason that I give it priority is it's a little bit cheaper, and being able to do that deal one face-up damage regardless of what the shields are, and because some of those critical effects are particularly devastating, and it essentially gives you an extra damage because you still get to count all the other ones, but you do one face-up one. When you do the Assault Concussion missiles, you get to do 2 additional damage, but it's to the shields, and none of them are going to be face up. So I like the Assault Proton Torpedoes a little bit more. So that's my number 1. Number 2 is the Assault Concussion missiles. It's a little bit more expensive. You get 2 extra damage instead of just 1. It goes against the 2 other hull zones. It's particularly good against Rebel players, weaken up their shields before they use those redirects. But it's a little bit more points, and I just prefer to have the Assault Proton Torpedoes. Particularly if you have Dodana or some other admiral that allows you to adjust criticals. So that's my number 1. Number 3 is expanded launchers. It's pretty darn expensive. It's 13 points and you get 2 additional black dice on your front. This is pretty good for raiders or a souped up gladiator with demolisher. It's pretty expensive and I usually don't recommend using it all that often, but if you have a particular strategy in mind, or if you're using the Insidious and you're planning on doing rear shots, ships that you're chasing, maybe it's a little bit more worthwhile, but for 13 points, it's not as good as the other 2 for sure. The next one is Rapid Reload. It's 8 points and it gives you 1 black die on either side. It's okay, particularly if you're going to have a very particular strategy. Gladiators already have 3 or 4 black dice depending on the version already on the sides. 1 more isn't really that big of a deal. So that's the quick one for Ordnance. And next we'll do Support Team. Before I go into more detail, I want to list the ships that can take the Support Team upgrade slot. For the Imperial side, it is only the Interdictor and the Gladiator. For the Rebels, it's the CR-90, the Nebulon B, and both versions of the MC-80. For me, number 6 is Nav Team. Your Navigate token allows you to either increase your speed, which it normally does, change your speed, or it can increase your yaw by 1. It's just not that big of a deal for 4 points, and you have to have a token. Unless you're having an admiral like Tarkin or Garm and you know you're going to be having a lot of tokens, I just don't see it as all that worthwhile. The next one is Engineering Team. It's 5 points. You gain 1 additional engineering point. I just don't see it as that big of a deal, especially since what I've talked about before about why I like Antilles and Wolf so much is this is 5 points and you get additional engineering point, but that only comes into effect when you do an engineering command. If you have Antilles, you either get 1 or 2 additional engineering points, and it's 7 points. And whenever you do a different command, you also get his advantage for that. Like, he's a expanded hangar and an engineering team, and in a lot of ways an engine tech. Those 2 officers are so much better than these, it kind of makes using them not as useful. So the next one is projection experts. I actually kind of like projection experts. I occasionally use them on home one sometimes, particularly if I have Antilles on that to be able to really boost up the engineering score, to be able to give those shields out to other ships. I think projection experts are going to be particularly useful for the interdictor since it has 5 engineering points. That way it can move 2 shields to another ship and still have 3 points left over to either repair a hull zone or add those shields back. Particularly if you have Wolf Gavarin, you'll be able to move 2 shields, recharge 2 shields. Even though it's number 4, Projection Experts does have a place for some ships, and I wouldn't put it on anything that has an engineering value of less than 4. Number 3 is one of the new ones, and I like it a lot, and it's still only number 3, is Medical Team. Before you deal a face-up damage card with the crew trait, you may discard this card and discard that damage card. It's only 1 point, and it essentially blocks you from getting that kind of critical effect. I think this is going to be particularly useful for Rebel ships, because they have relatively smaller hull, and if you're having opponents that are trying to do critical effects on you with the APTs and so on, that this is a good insurance for only 1 point. So I actually really like it. It's only situational. Maybe you'll never use it, but for 1 point, I really can't complain all that much. So if you have some extra points, maybe go ahead and throw this on ships that you want to keep alive, particularly a flagship. Number 2 is a new card as well, Fighter Coordination Team. After you execute a maneuver, you may select a number of unengaged friendly squadrons up to your squadron value at close or medium range and move them distance 1. I really like this. This is particularly useful when you have fighter builds. It allows them extra movement. It's particularly good for the slower stuff like B-Wings. You can also move them around so that way they're engaged or so that they're in better firing position on enemy ships. It's 3 points, and you would want to put this on a ship that has a relatively large squadron value, so MC-80 and the Liberty are definitely going to be a good fit for this one, as well as the interdictor and stuff like that. And the number 1 is Engine Techs. It's not for all ships, but on the Demolisher, it sings so well that I have to place it this high. It's 8 points, so it's relatively expensive, but whenever you do a navigate command, you get to do an extra 1-speed maneuver. And for the Demolisher, that means it can move and then fire after that second movement. So I've had so many people with Ozzel and all these other ones be able to essentially jump up speed 4 in front of me in just devastating roll, and I thought I was completely out of range and there was no way that they would be able to get me. But because of Engine Techs and Ozzel and all these other things, it's definitely a good card. The only downside is you can only use it when you have a navigate command. So when you have a Demolisher, are essentially going to be doing only navigate commands. But its firepower is so good, you really don't miss just losing that 1 die. Particularly if you have APTs on it, your dice are already high, and you should also have Ordnance Experts to really increase your chance that you're going to get at least one of those critical effects. That's something I should mention before. If you have something that is a black critical only, try to have Ordnance Experts or Vader or Screed, someone that can manipulate die so you're more likely to get that critical value. So that is the end of Support Team and Ordnance Experts. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found this informative. Of these 2 categories, what are your favorite upgrades? Where do you agree with me? Where do you disagree? And please write in the comments below. Thank you.